So what are the battle plans for Penn State? In today's episode, I have a little help in discussing Penn State's strategy going up against Utah in the Rose Bowl.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always. And if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, thanks so much for the support there. Of course, if you get the audio version of the show, thanks so much for just tuning in to all the latest episodes and comment any feedback. Of course, as always, open to any of your questions or comments about the show. And I love being able to do this with fellow Penn Staters, colleagues, good friends of mine. And today I am privileged to be joined by a coworker, a good friend, a co-host of other, because I work at a radio station and ESPN Radio State College, and he is Matt Bortner on the other side. Matt, thanks so much for joining me here. You and I get to talk Penn State a lot, given that our station does cover them pretty frequently. But now here we're doing it over on the podcast.
Jumping the gun, saying good friends. You're awfully presumptuous. No, always fun to be talking Penn State sports with you.
Yeah, in today's episode, we're going to be talking game plan, X's and O's, what we expect and what Penn State should do when they're on offense, when they're on defense, and how we expect Utah to counter. We don't really know the game plan as well for the Utes, but if we were the coaches for Utah, what would we draw up to stop or try to limit Penn State? And then we'll finish the last segment looking at the class of 2023 again. If you hadn't already, go check out yesterday's episode. Go through every single prospect and where they're from, what traits they have, just a player profile for everyone that at the time of the airing of this episode, it's already going to be, everyone's going to be signed on the dotted line. There is a chance that they could get one other interesting prospect in a Daniel Harris. He is a cornerback out of Florida, but it's down to, by the time that you might watch this episode or listen to it, he's going to be signed somewhere, and hopefully that's Happy Valley, that's Penn State. But we're talking Rose Bowl to begin things, and let's go with the offense when Penn State has the football. Matt, this offense has taken not necessarily, I wouldn't say, a makeover approach to the way things have been, but since Parker Washington went down, we haven't seen him back. The offense has changed, and you're not seeing a spread type of offense. Penn State's not trying to push down the field, but they're rather trying to be conservative. They're trying to go ground and pound and split between Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Since we know that Parker Washington's not playing, do you expect more of the same with those heavy packages, the tight ends, and possibly 3 tight end formations, and Sean Clifford not throwing as much against Utah?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say not throwing as much. I think he's still, passed the ball a effective and a decent amount of times, even without Parker Washington, but I wouldn't expect it to be the focal point we haven't seen since Parker Washington's been out. I think when you look at what Penn State will try to do in this game, your focal point is your running backs in this. Nothing has really, I think, changed in development of Mitchell Tinsley is a good receiver. I wouldn't call him a game-breaking receiver, but he's a quality receiver. But I just don't think you have, other than mismatches at tight end, I don't think Penn State has anything has changed at this point to say, hey, we really have an advantage in our passing attack. And I think with this extra amount of time, you can see more wrinkles in terms of the short passing game, getting screens involved, maybe even some tight end screens. But I think more importantly is different types of runs with the running backs. Maybe we'll see some two running back sets more than we have this year with having these guys available. And, I mean, maybe, too, you see them flank out wide a bit more if Kevon Lee's healthy. There's a lot of things I think you can do in this run game with having a month to prepare against Utah, who is just all around a solid football team. I think it's Penn State's since playing Ohio State and Michigan, it is the toughest opponent they will face this year.
Yeah, I really do find it interesting when people say that because I've looked at some of the expert early predictions, and people are saying that there's going to be a lot of points. There's been key opt-outs. It's really just been Joey Porter Jr. and Clark Phillips. And, yeah, both those guys set the tone when it comes to the passing game. But
lockdown, yeah.
They are able to take away a side of the football field. But I also look at the fact that I think these are going to become more run-focused type of teams going into this game. Cam Rising is going to be without his favorite target, the best weapon, arguably, and that's Dalton Kincaid. And if it weren't for Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen, I would go to argue that he's just the best athlete, period, when it comes to either offensive attack. But we're talking Penn State's offense first here. So you're expecting more of the same, that they're going to run the football and they're going to try to use the tight ends and play action, and they're not really going to try to open it up and go deep. They're just going to basically get the lead and then play with the lead.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's here's what I'll say about Penn State's passing game, too, is it is most effective when they're having a good run game and they're able to set up passing from that. So that's the sort of passing attack you look for Penn State, is plays that are set up from their run game right now, because that's just, that's sort of their makeup, especially without Parker Washington. And that has been what Sean Clifford has been best at in his career. And I think that's also something to take a look at now, is not saying that he's indispensable and Penn State doesn't care if he gets hurt in this game, but you're not saving Sean Clifford up for the long haul. So if he gets some looks at running the ball, some different looks there, I would expect, Sean wants to go out in a blaze of glory, and sort of this would be his, you could say, biggest win, signature win on his resume if he goes out on top in the Rose Bowl. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see maybe not so much dedicated runs, but him deciding, hey, if nothing's there, I'm just going to take off and run and put my body on the line.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because throughout the season, Penn State was worried about the longevity. It's not that they couldn't turn to Drew Aller like last year when they had Taquan Roberson and a really inexperienced Christian Bayer, because he had lost all that experience in football. There was no... But they
obviously felt he was their best option of winning football games this year.
Yeah. So, and I'm not, but they actually had that insurance behind him this year. But still, Sean Clifford was your. People are going to disagree, and that's fine. Be in the comments, disagree, and say that Drew should have been the starter all along. Get him developing a little earlier. That's fine. That's a different conversation. But Sean Clifford, they wanted to protect him, and that's why you don't see him run as much. And yes, it would be his most signature victory, because Matt, the only one that I can really think of is the 2019 game against Michigan.
Yeah, and I think you'd throw out, how the game started this year, and it's not, when you're looking at best opponents, it's not going to come there. But the comeback victory against Purdue to start the year, that was a gutsy victory and a poised victory by Sean Clifford. But I don't think people are going to, his best memory isn't going to be, these wins. That's just not what Sean Clifford's legacy is going to be.
Right.
I think you could also go back to one of his best performances or best wins would have been against Memphis in the Cotton Bowl as well.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But Rose Bowl, to me, would be, he has a good performance. He leads them to victory. That's the one that's going to stick out the most to Penn State fans.
I mean, Penn State's taking this one very seriously. It's not to say that Utah isn't, but with the lack of opt-outs, I mean, I think there's prestige is kind of on the line in this game.
Plus, getting guys back in this game for Penn State, possibly. Is Olu going to play? Is Caden Wallace going to play?
They expect them to be available. Yeah. James Franklin said that, and that's a boost in itself. Juice Scruggs intends to play. Sal Wormley's going to be healthier.
Yep.
And Hunter Norzad's going to be at guard. So you run the football if you have that offensive line. Okay, so now if you're Utah, I think the obvious answer, as we conclude this first segment around Penn State's offensive game plan, then we'll get into what we expect Manny Diaz to do and what he should do. But if you're Utah, you just sell out for the run, right?
Yeah. I mean, you make Sean Clifford make a pinpoint pass down the field. You keep you protect against the screens. You play aggressive there, try to get tackles in the backfield, and you load the box and try to keep Penn State at bay in the running game. And I think, that's sort of something I would debate whether Penn State did enough of that this year in some of their key games, loading the box more, and with how talented they are in the secondary, just making teams beat you on big plays. So be it if you finally get beat on a big play. And if that continues to happen, okay, maybe make your adjustments there. But I think that would be the smart route for Utah to take in this game.
Yeah, you can definitely load the box. You can play one-on-one, and it's not that Mitchell Tinsley and Keandre Lambert-Smith aren't capable, but Penn State's going to use the ground game.
Well, it's a two-factor thing there, Zach. It's do you think they're capable of doing it, and you still have to have the downfield pass be on target as well.
Yeah. And we've seen that as Sean Clifford, in terms of deep ball accuracy, has been a little unreliable. So I expect them to ground and pound with Singleton, Kaytron Allen, and now that we expect Kevon Lee to be back in the fold, take the pressure off of Sean Clifford. You have the offensive line to protect. And if you're Utah, and something that was interesting to me, they aren't really that great at getting after the quarterback with just 4. They got to send the blitz. So I do expect Utah to be a little more aggressive in the box, given that Penn State is just going to try to be the more physical team in this game. It is Locked On Nittany Lions. That is Matt Bortner on the other side. He's a co-host with me here at the radio station. We're going to step aside for just a moment. When we return, we're going to talk about Utah and how are they going to set things offensively, and what Penn State's going to do to counter them defensively, what Manny Diaz is going to put together. It is Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball, we've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen today. Hey, for your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Zach Seyko, your host of Locked On Nittany Lions, joined by, on the other side, if you're watching this on the other side of the screen, Matt Bortner, co-host of mine. We talk Penn State sports all the time, colleagues at the radio station that we work at together in State College. Okay, Matt, we just finished up talking about the battle plans for Penn State's offense. How about Penn State's defense? I mean, Manny Diaz in this group, now that they're all adjusted to the system, they're ready to go. I don't expect any lapse. And we've seen what Penn State's been able to do. I know it was against lackluster competition, but they've been able to survive without Joey Porter Jr. because Kalen King and Johnny Dixon are capable of holding down the fort. I watched particularly the film from the Oregon-Utah game. When you get pressure on Cam Rising, when the defensive line puts their hands in the air, Utah does not move the football as well, and they're going to be without their best passing target in Dalton Kincaid. So not only do I like Penn State's defense in this matchup because they're so blitz happy, and Cam Rising is not the best, I would say, against pressure, but how do you think Penn State's they're just not going to break away from the brand is what I'm getting at.
Well, and I think you sort of look at totality in Penn State's defense in whole. The only real issue they had was that Michigan game. You can take a look back at the final score of the Ohio State game, but Penn State's defense really was put in a bunch of tough situations. They put Ohio State in conflict that whole game. They stuffed them on short runs. They didn't really, until late with Marvin Harrison Jr., give up many deep plays, and I think maybe they didn't adjust the best way on putting your best defender on Marvin Harrison Jr. So I don't think if you're looking on one-on-one matchups too, I don't think there's anything where you look and you say, I just don't know how Penn State can defend this guy. I don't think there's a typical guy, a specific guy on the Utah roster for their offense that does that. Solomon Enos is a good receiver. His dad actually played at Penn State, Curtis Enos. But I think if you sort of look where Penn State's problems lie this whole year, it's their coverage within the linebacker unit. Even though Kincaid's out, they still got some reliable guys at tight end. We'll see how they use them. And I think also, like Sean Clifford, Cam Rising's going to lay it all out on the line.
Oh, he's
in this
tough.
game.
He's tough as nails. Yeah. No, he's absolutely. You start with him because
I'd expect to see him running a lot too in this game.
He sets the tone with his toughness. Like that hit he took against USC and popped back up.
I don't know how.
USC's soft on defense though. They can't tackle worth anything. And Penn State's a much surefire tackling team. Yeah, they're blitz happy. I would say the biggest matchup, I'm glad that they don't have Dalton Kincaid. But if I'm Penn State, I'm keying in on first. Let's start with the running game because Utah is able to cycle between a few backs. Tavion Thomas is their leader, 687 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns. But then you have Jaquindon Jackson, who showed flashes in the USC game, and he actually leads the team in rushing touchdowns. So that dynamic duo. Then you have Micah Bernard out of the backfield. Yep. So it's both. That's why I'm saying, like, this is going to be a low-scoring game. Yeah. I with the way that the game plans are set up, and Parker Washington's your best receiver, he's out. Dalton Kincaid is your best pass catcher, he's out for different reasons, obviously. But you are losing that reliability in the air attack, so why not go with your best asset and just stick to what works? And for Utah, the ground game's been working. The play action's been working. For Penn State as of late, Nicholas Singleton, Kaytron Allen, they've grown up a little more. They can be featured backs. You get Kevon Lee back into the fold. So if I'm Manny Diaz, I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm loading the box. I'm going man-to-man on the outside. I don't think that Money Parks or Vele, even though they're quality receivers. I'm not saying that. But Joey Porter Jr. is not available, but Johnny Dixon and Kalen King, I think, can go one-on-one with them.
Just sort of what I talked about with Penn State's offense. Yep. I don't think there's a guy that you're targeting this if there's a certain match, we're really targeting this guy. I just don't really see that. I think it comes down to, again, is you're in the middle there with your linebackers. If you're going to want to attack Penn State's passing game, I think that's the best place to do it.
Yeah, and Thomas Yasmin is going to be the guy. Yeah. I think if you're going to...
He's 5 touchdowns this year, 300 yards.
As the third-string tight end, Matt, because Dalton Kincaid wasn't even the number one guy until there were injuries in the tight end room. So big play ability out of them, just 12 catches, and I mentioned 300 yards. That's 25 yards per catch. Yeah, he's very capable. I am not, even though Matt, if you look at the Locked On Nittany Lions comments on YouTube from some Utah fans or college football fans in general, just looking for a good game, people say, well, you can't sleep on Thomas Yasmin. I'm not. I'm not by any means. I think that it's going to be difficult to stop them because you're getting physical versus physical, and which side's going to have the advantage. I think this is one of the more even matchups that you're going to see. Now, if you're Utah and you know that you're going to get a blitz-happy defense from Manny Diaz, and you know that your quarterback isn't the best under pressure, but they're going to sell out for the run. So how do you counter all that?
In terms of if you're Utah,
how do you take the pressure off of Cam Rising if you're going to see a lot of pressure in your ground game? I don't think the ground game's going to get going right away for Utah.
Well, and I think part of it could be your quarterback draws. If you can get Cam Rising on
Bootlegs.
Yeah, bootlegs, and getting the run game going.
Yeah.
Again, it sort of sounds
but
like
if
I'm
the run
talking
game's
about
not there right away, what do you do?
I don't know. That's sort of
That's up to Utah.
But you take a look at Penn State's offense too. I don't know that they're built to really throw themselves out of those situations. It comes down to you put trust in your defense then and try not to make mistakes. I think that's big in this game is you don't want to be the quarterback making the big mistakes if you really trust your defense so much.
Now, the benefit of Cam Rising being that he's a veteran, Manny Diaz was so good at confusing opposing offenses up to this point in time, and now he's not going to have that same luxury. Rising's not going to be fooled or faked out by anything. And I want to remind some of the Nittany Lion fans that this Utah offensive line is pretty damn good. They've only allowed 8 sacks, and like I said, they're averaging over 200 yards per game on the ground. So it's not going to be easy to stop them, but that's basically it. You know both teams are going to be run first. You're going to sell out for the run, and then it's adapting to the play action. And I think that Yasmin is going to have a Dalton Kincaid type of day just because he's going to step into that focal point role because the boundary corners are so reliable. So is Kobe King, is he mature enough now to handle that spot at the Mike linebacker? Because you can't put Tyler Elsdon on him. You need Kobe King's athleticism. And I don't know that Jair Brown, are you going to match Jair Brown with him? Who would you pick? Would you pick Kobe King or Jair Brown to go up against Yasmin?
I mean, probably Jair Brown if you're looking at, because, you know, Kobe King showed the athleticism, but it comes down to consistency and just in general that linebacker group, if you're looking at as a whole. Now, Abdul Carter had a phenomenal season, but it's just depth-wise and reliability. That's the one weakness this team has. So I think it's funny, too, you look at just Utah's program. When you think about Pac-12 football, they don't fit that mold or whatever the stigma people have about, you know, the West Coast teams. This has been a program that is really relied on their physicality under Whittingham. So they've been it's a consistent under them. It's you're going to play tough. Yeah, you're going to get, like I said, mano-a-mano, physical versus physical. This isn't the same finesse Penn State team that they would like to be. And for Mike Yurcich and company, you're going to see a lot of T-backfield. You're going to see a lot of those double tight end sets in the backfield lined up to the hips of Sean Clifford. And they're going to go ground and pound. And same thing with Utah. Why not? Just with the way that they've been physical all season. This is Locked On Nittany Lions, and my partner in crime for today's episode is Matt Bortner on the other side. When we return, our final segment is going to be talking about the Penn State recruiting class of 2023. At the time when you're watching this show, everyone's going to be signed on the dotted line. So just our thoughts about the class of 2023 and how much of an impact they can have on this Penn State football program. That's coming up next. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for joining me on another episode. And I say that to you, the listener, the watcher, but also Matt Bortner, who is co-hosting with me and bringing him on to analyze the game plan between Penn State and Utah, just like some actual X's and O's and what we expect for both teams to roll out in terms of game plan and attacking one side. Now let's get into the future of it and finish up. Again, go check out yesterday's episode where I talked about the class and gave a player profile for every single kid that was committed to Penn State. Now they're officially signed, depending on when you watch this, but this is going up on early National Signing Day here, Wednesday, December 21st. And this is a really good class. They're just outside of the top 10. They were as high as 7th, I think it was, Matt, when they had some other guys committed. They didn't really lose. They lost some impact players, but I think Penn State was able to recover. They're going to have 23 scholarship commits, and then they're obviously going to have the preferred run-ons and guys that are just going to come in and commit. I mean, look at Adam DeLuca, for example. So don't rule anybody out just because they don't have all the flashy 3, 4, 5 stars with them, but obviously that's nice. They got quite a few of them, though.
Yeah, they got a lot. I mean, and Penn State is so good at finding the diamond in the rough early. They go after, I mean, take Drew Aller, for example. They scouted Drew Aller immediately. They were one of the first to offer him, and that's why he's at Penn State.
I think you're looking, I mean, he was still sought after, but take a look at Jevin Williams now. He is a 5-star by 24/7 Sports and is now ranked as the number 1 player in the state of Pennsylvania and number 5 overall when it comes to offensive line.
Oh yeah, no, he's the number 5 overall prospect. Period, and that's from On3. So they all of the whatever Rivals, 24/7, On3, ESPN, like they all have their different scouting departments.
But he shot up the boards big time on all of them.
Yep. I mean, even Alex Birchmeier, if you look at some of the ratings, he's the number 1 interior offensive lineman.
Yep,
if you will. So. Yeah, Penn State definitely they've really set up the offensive line here. Is that the takeaway from the class of 2023? That was one of mine, is that they got some really good offensive line prospects with Anthony Donko, Birchmeier, and Javen Williams.
Yeah, I think that, and then you look at the secondary and linebacker as well. I think in just terms of, well, on defense, where you were looking to shore up your depth the most, linebacker, you hit big with getting 3 linebackers in Kavion Keys, Tamir Robinson. Keys was the late flip from UNC, and Tony Rojas. That, to me, was super important. And then you just talk about the offensive line, how many quality guys they got on the offensive line. 2 in Birchmeier and Jevin Williams, who are regarded by everybody as some of the top offensive linemen in this class of 2023. You look what Penn State's building at offensive line. Yeah. You haven't been able to say this in a long time, but it is a position group that you now feel really comfortable about. At times we felt excited about the future, but I feel like you now, like, it's a reliable excitement about the future.
Anymore.
Yeah, it's not like oh man, we hope this is the year they break out. There's some interesting pieces there. It's like, all right, now we got to decide which of them is our best offensive lineman, because of there's so many good offensive linemen on this Penn State roster, and that's you look at Michigan and Ohio State, the runs they've had in the Big Ten. You can take a look at obviously the quarterback position when they've had their best moments has been really good. Ohio State has been so reliable at quarterback, but there's also one thing that goes hand in hand with that, and those two teams have had some very dynamic offensive lines, and with possibly Drew Aller being superstar. I mean, that's the type of ability he has. You put those two things together, in terms of where offenses are built, that's very exciting for this Penn State program.
Yeah, and you bring up the secondary. The question now that I want to pose about the class of 2023 is, before I get to, actually, I want to save it for last, your most important prospect. Is it Williams? Is it Birchmeier? Whoever. I have one player in mind particularly. Are you concerned that there's only one wide receiver commit in this class, and that's Carmelo Taylor? And he's good. He's the kind of he's got that Jahan Dotson build. He'll put on the weight, but he's a little lighter. He's 5'11", 155 pounds currently listed. But he's a 4-star. But he's the only guy coming in. Does that bother you at all?
A bit. Okay. And, though sometimes it just comes down to is there guys that are in our grasp to get as the wide receivers with the transfer portal, and we've seen the possibility of bringing in Dante Cephas from Kent State. You can cover up the immediate of not getting a wide receiver. I think Penn State's tight end room is so deep that helps them out a lot. But I would expect next year that would probably that and maybe running back, because now you're getting towards the tail end of your running backs now, their career, in terms of Singleton and
you're blanking Kaytron Allen?
Yeah. And we were talking about him, but and Kaytron Allen, because expect maybe they have the chance to leave early. But
both
the skill position, I think, is what's going to be hit next. in the 2024 class, but I think when you look at guys that are going to make quality impact, overall, I don't see a big concern in this 2023 class. You're gonna have to have wide receivers step up next year.
Yeah.
In turn, is it going to be Caden Saunders? Is it going to be Amari Evans? That is a concern next year, though.
Yeah, don't forget about the recruits that they pulled in from 2021 and 2020 as well. So, and just last year, as you mentioned, Caden Saunders from 2022. Like, he's kind of that. Is he that next KJ Hamler? We're going to find out if he can be that kind of reliable. And the tight ends, you're going to have Tyler Warren, you're going to have Theo Johnson, whatever Brenton Strange decides to do. But then you get a prospect like Raplia. You get Andrew Raplia in this class. So we've thrown out a lot of names. They picked up 2 running backs in this cycle as well, with London Montgomery and Cameron Wallace just as of late committing this week. So
yesterday,
I
guess depend when you're listening to this, but
out of all the prospects, who's the best that you think, or who has the most potential? And maybe it's Williams and Birchmeier, and maybe I'm overthinking this question.
Yeah, I guess, though, if I'm not throwing out an obvious answer, I think one that really intrigues me, and I guess you got to hope, too, that there's no late flip there from King Mack tomorrow. I think because of how well Penn State has developed that safety position, I think King Mack is a guy that, people will really look out for. Maybe not year one because you're so deep there.
Yeah.
But I think even with his smaller stature, he is such a big-time playmaker. Maybe that's a guy that some people are sleeping on, even though he's at the top end of this class.
I was going to actually say Elliott Washington. So we're and that's that versatility too, because King Mack can either be a safety or he can be a corner. It's wherever he fits best. Same with Elliott Washington, who they flipped from Alabama. I'm going to go with Tony Rojas because I think he's going to get playing time at that at the on-ball linebacker, because you're going to have Abdul Carter, you're going to most likely have Kobe King in the middle, and then Tyler Elsden's going to be that guy as the on-ball, as the strong side linebacker, and that's
Curtis Jacobs coming back.
That's kind of assuming if Curtis Jacobs. So if Curtis Jacobs doesn't come back, then Tony Rojas definitely gets playing time right away. If Curtis Jacobs does come back, then you are really set up at linebacker next year. So the defense is really setting up nicely with guys, and all those guys, a lot of them on the defensive side, can have an instant impact, which is really nice about this class. Just like the class of 2022, Singleton, Kaytron Allen, Abdul Carter, guys, Denai Dennis Sutton that had instant impact. That's going to be the same standard set for the class of 2023, and the potential is definitely really a lot higher, I think, than 12th as the overall class when all's said and done. Matt, before I let you go, where can people connect with you online? I really appreciate you helping me out with this episode.
No problem. And as I mentioned, always fun to talk Penn State sports, especially Penn State football. But if you want to check out most of my stuff, go to Twitter, and that is M_Bortner. That is BORTNER, M_Bortner.
All right, yeah, and for all the people that that are listening, so that's good for them. I do that as well. At Zach_Seyko for me on Twitter, and then Locked On Nittany for the show. Matt, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for tuning in for another episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.